My school is Lexington Elementary. My teacher is Miss Marsh, and I'm in second grade. I'm going to be reading to you two of my favorite books. One is Sophie Squash, and I'm going to go ahead and read this one first. Sophie Squash by Pat Ziello Miller and Anne Wilster. One bright fall day, Sophie chose a squash at the farmer's market. Her parents planned to serve it for supper, but Sophie had other ideas. It was just the right size to hold in her arms, just the right size to bounce on her knee, just the right size to love. "I'm glad we met," Sophie whispered. "Good friends are hard to find." At home, Sophie used markers to give her squash a face. Then she wrapped it in a blanket and rocked it to sleep. When it was time to make supper, Sophie's mother looked at the squash. She looked at Sophie. "I call her Bernice," Sophie said. I'll call for a pizza," said her mother. After that, Bernice went everywhere with Sophie, to story time at the library, to visit other squash at the farmer's market, to practice somersaults by the garden. Every night, Sophie gave Bernice a bottle, a hug, and a kiss. "Well, we did hope she'd love vegetables," Sophie's mother told her father. "Shh," Sophie said. "Bernice is sleeping." "Sweet pea," Sophie's mother said one morning as they made blueberry waffles. "Bernice is a squash, not a friend. If we don't eat her soon, she'll get mushy and gross. Let's bake her with marshmallows. Won't that taste yummy?" "Don't listen, Bernice," Sophie cried. That afternoon, Sophie's father took her shopping. "Sugar beet," he said. "Bernice is a squash. Why don't you pick a nice toy to play with instead?" But the trucks were too hard and the dolls were too soft. Sophie crouched Bernice tightly. "No thanks," she said. "I have everything I need." After supper, Sophie's parents called a family meeting. Bernice napped in Sophie's lap. "Why don't we donate Bernice to the food pantry before she rots?" her father suggested. Sophie shook her head. "Bernice will last forever." "Bernice seems a little bulgy," said Sophie's dad on the way to the library one day. "She looks perfect to me," Sophie replied. At story time, some kids pointed and stared. "What's that spotty thing?" a boy asked. "Her name is Bernice, and she's a squash," Sophie said, "with freckles." "Maybe Bernice should stay at home next time," Sophie's mom suggested. "Why?" Sophie asked. She wasn't the one being rude. Still, as winter neared, Sophie noticed changes. Bernice seemed softer, and her somersaults lacked their usual style. "Visiting friends will cheer you up," Sophie said. At the farmer's market, squash were everywhere. Firm, shiny squash. "What keeps a squash healthy?" Sophie asked a farmer. "It's simple, really," he said. "Fresh air, good. Clean dirt, a little love." Well, Sophie thought, "I have all that." At home, Sophie cleared leaves from Bernice's favorite spot. She made a bed of soft soil, tucked Bernice in, and kissed her goodnight. "Get better soon," she whispered. That night, while Sophie slept, the wind whistled and tiny snowflakes fell. When she awoke, the world was covered in white. "Do you think Bernice is cold out there?" Sophie asked her mother. "I'm sure she's warm and cozy under her snow blanket," her mother replied. Sophie gazed out the window all morning. She was still there in the afternoon when her father came home with a surprise. "You need a new friend," he said. "Meet Ace." Ace was nice, but boring. He just swam around and around in his bowl. But during the long winter, Sophie discovered that Ace was a superb silent reader who did fabulous flips and turns. And he always listened politely when she talked about Bernice. Bernice was great at keeping secrets. When the snow finally melted, Sophie rushed to the garden. The only thing there was a small green sprout. It looked strangely familiar. "Bernice," Sophie cried, "how was your winter?" After that, Sophie, Ace, and Bernice ate lunch together every day. One bright summer morning, Sophie somersaulted across her yard, landed by the garden, and stared in disbelief. Bernice had grown 2 tiny squash. "Wow," Sophie told them, "you look just like your mom." Soon, Bonnie and Baxter were just the right size for Sophie to hold in her arms and bounce on her knee. Just the right size to love. The next book I'll be reading is The Word Collector by Peter H. Reynolds, from the author of Happy Dreamer and the Dot. Collectors collect things. Some people collect stamps. Some people collect coins. Others collect rocks. Some collect art. Some collect bugs. Others collect baseball cards. Some people collect comic books. And Jerome, what did he collect? Jerome collected words. He collected words he heard. "My trip to Peru was perfectly pleasant." Certain words caught his attention. He collected words he saw. Willow tea shop. Certain words jumped out at him. He collected words he read. Wizard of Oz. Certain words popped off the page. Short and sweet words, 2-syllable treats, and multi-syllable words that sounded like little songs. There were words he did not know the meaning of at first, but they were marvelous to say. Aromatic, vociferous, effervescent. There were words whose sounds were perfectly suited to their meaning. Jerome filled his scrapbooks with more and more of his favorite words. Jerome's collection grew. He began organizing them: dreamy, science, sad, action, poetic. One day, while transporting them, Jerome slipped and his words went flying. As he began to pick them up, he noticed his collections had become jumbled. Big words next to little words, sad words next to dreamy words. Jerome began stringing words together, words he had not imagined being side by side. He used his words to write poems. He used his poems to make songs. They moved, they delighted. Some of his simplest words were his most powerful. I understand. I'm sorry. Thank you. You matter. Jerome eagerly collected more and more of his favorite words. The more words he knew, the more clearly he could share with the world what he was thinking, feeling, and dreaming. One breezy afternoon, Jerome climbed the highest hill, pulling a wagon packed with his word collection. He smiled as he emptied his collection of words into the wind. He saw children in the valley below, scurrying about collecting words from the breeze. Jerome had no words to describe how happy that made him. Reach for your own words, tell the world who you are and how you will make it better. Peter Hamilton Reynolds. Those were the 2 books that I read. I hope you enjoyed these 2 stories, and I loved reading with all of y'all.